Attenzione a Dzeko davanti a Ter Stegen, e Daniele la conclusione, gol! A questo pallone messo dentro interessante,
Liverpool 3-0. Corner taken quickly.
Martin geht direkt zu dem.
Jung Goretzka, Josep Maria.
Gefährlich! Ist gegen alle!
Coutinho! Vielleicht hier ist Coutinho.
Vielleicht nochmal Felipe Coutinho.
Something died at Barcelona. Not suddenly, not with warning. It withered in plain sight while the world watched trophies and called it greatness. But beneath the gold, the structure was rotting. And when it fell so completely that even those who saw it coming couldn't believe the wreckage. This is the story of how one of football's greatest empires forgot how to fight, forgot how to evolve, and collapsed under the weight of its own mythology. There was a time when Barcelona didn't just win. They rewrote the rules. Under Pep Guardiola, between 2008 and 2012, they turned football into art. Tiki-taka wasn't just a tactic. It was philosophy made flesh. Xavi orchestrating from deep. Iniesta gliding through chaos. Messi dismantling defenses like they were made of paper. 2 Champions League titles. 3 La Liga crowns. The sextuple. It was football at its most pure, most dominant, most inevitable. And then 2015, the treble under Luis Enrique. Messi, Suárez, Neymar ripping through Europe. Another Champions League. Another moment of total supremacy. Barcelona stood at the summit, and the future looked infinite. But that's where the story twists. Because 2015 wasn't the peak. It was the last gasp. The final triumph before the long, agonizing descent. What happened next wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, dangerous. Barcelona stopped evolving. The tactics that had conquered the world became doctrine. Possession for possession's sake. Slow build-up when the game had moved to vertical speed. High defensive lines against teams built to press and counter. And while Barca stood still, frozen in their golden age, the rest of football accelerated past them. Liverpool learned to press with coordinated fury. Bayern perfected positional dominance, mixed with devastating transitions. Even mid-table sides mastered organized defensive blocks and lightning counters. Football had moved on. Barcelona hadn't. The club became a museum, a place where past glories were venerated but not studied. Tactics weren't updated. Systems weren't refreshed. La Masia, once the beating heart of Barcelona's identity, was neglected. The academy that gave the world Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Puyol was reduced to a footnote while the club chased expensive short-term fixes. And because Messi was still there, still scoring, still winning games alone, nobody noticed the empire was already crumbling.
When Messi has the ball, 1-1-1, you are dead. That's why I never like the individual man-to-man against Messi. Messi is a cage. You have to create a cage. I would say Barca without Messi, I would say Liverpool favorite.
Right.
But Barca with Messi, Messi is Messi. I never say Messi is the special one in here because everything he does all the time. So Messi the special one because he scored 2 goals against Manchester United. He scores 2 goals all the time.
It's about individual players. And just to give you an example, Messi won the Champions League with 3 different managers. I think it's easier to win with him than against.
Lionel Messi didn't just play for Barcelona. He carried them on his back through matches they had no business winning, through seasons that should have ended in failure. His numbers were absurd. 50 goals, 60 goal contributions. He dragged teams with no midfield, no defense, no tactical plan in the titles. But here's the tragedy. Messi's brilliance became a mask. It hid the rot. Every time he scored a last-minute free kick or dribbled past 4 defenders, it papered over the cracks. It allowed the board to ignore structural problems. It let coaches avoid tactical innovation. It gave senior players permission to coast. Opponents knew it too. Every big European side had the same game plan: stop Messi and Barcelona collapse. And it worked, because there was no plan B, no alternative outlet, no tactical depth. Just give the ball to Leo and hope for magic. Inside the dressing room, leadership evaporated. Xavi and Iniesta left. Puyol was long gone. The vocal, driven leaders who held the team accountable were replaced by comfortable, aging stars who had won everything and had nothing left to prove. Training intensity dropped. Tactical discipline slipped. And nobody said a word. Barcelona mistook individual genius for collective strength. They thought they were still elite because Messi made them look elite. But strip away number 10, and what remained was a team with no identity, no hunger, and no idea how to fight when things got hard.
The question is, which Barcelona are we going to have when Messi decides to say goodbye? And for me, a question that I put in the other day when I was in another television channel is the question that I'm going to keep for a few times. Which Barcelona are we going to have when Messi decides to go home? That's for me the big question. That's for me the big question.
Rome, April 10th, 2018. Stadio Olimpico. Barcelona arrived with a 4-1 lead from the first leg. Comfortable, confident, inevitable. This was supposed to be a formality. A gentle cruise into the semifinals. It started wrong. Edin Dzeko scored early. The stadium erupted. But even then, Barca weren't worried. They still had a 2-goal cushion. Away goals in their favor. They just needed to keep calm. Control the game. Do what they always did. But they didn't control anything. Roma pressed. Barca retreated. Daniele De Rossi smashed in a penalty. 2-1. Suddenly the aggregate was level. And then the unthinkable.
Attenzione a questo pallone messo dentro, interessante.
3-0 on the night. Roma had done it. But the scoreline wasn't the story. The story was how Barcelona responded. Or rather, how they didn't. After the first goal, there was no reaction. No intensity. No leadership. Players stood around, looking at each other, waiting for someone else to fix it. Passes went sideways. Movement stalled. Fear crept in, and nobody fought it. Valverde stood on the touchline, frozen. No tactical changes. No urgency. Just passivity. And when the final whistle blew, the Barca players didn't look angry. They looked relieved it was over. The collapse at Roma wasn't about tactics. It was about mentality. It was the moment the world saw that Barcelona, when truly tested, when the pressure mounted, when the game demanded courage, had none left to give. You'd think they'd learn. You'd think after Rome, after the humiliation, the soul-searching, the promises to never let it happen again, that something would change. It didn't. May 7th, 2019. Anfield. Barcelona led 3-0 from the first leg. Again, same situation, same comfortable cushion, same quiet confidence. Surely not twice. Surely they couldn't collapse the same way again. Divock Origi scored early. Then Jorginho Wijnaldum, twice in 2 minutes. Suddenly it was 3-0. Aggregate level. Anfield was shaking. And then the corner.
3-0. Corner taken quickly, Origi!
Goal. 4-0. Barcelona didn't even react. Defenders stood still, ball watching. Ter Stegen rooted to his line. It was chaos, amateur, humiliating. And it was over. But just like Rome, the scoreline wasn't the deepest wound. It was the manner, the total absence of fight. After Liverpool's second goal, Barca players looked defeated. Shoulders slumped, heads down. No one rallied the team. No one screamed for urgency. Messi, isolated up front, could only watch as the midfield and defense disintegrated behind him. Anfield confirmed what Rome had whispered. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't a one-off. This was a team psychologically broken. A team that didn't believe in itself when the stakes were highest. A team that had forgotten how to win ugly, to suffer, to claw back when behind. History had repeated itself, and the world was watching. August 14th, 2020. Estadio de Luz, Lisbon. The Champions League quarterfinal. Barcelona versus Bayern Munich. One match. Winner advances. Loser goes home. It was a massacre. Bayern scored in the fourth minute. Then again, and again, and again. Thomas Muller twice. Ivan Perisic. Serge Gnabry. Joshua Kimmich. Philippe Coutinho, on loan from Barcelona, came off the bench and scored twice against his parent club. 8-2. The final score felt impossible. Surreal. Like a scoreline from a training ground mismatch. Not a Champions League knockout tie. But it wasn't a fluke. It was a systematic destruction. Bayern pressed Barca into oblivion. Every time a Barcelona defender touched the ball, two Bayern players swarmed. Every pass was hurried, inaccurate, desperate. The high defensive line that had worked a decade ago was exposed brutally. Gnabry and Perisic ran in behind again and again, exploiting acres of space. Tactically, Barca had no answers. Quique Setién stood helpless on the touchline. Substitutions changed nothing. The midfield was overrun. The defense was shredded. Messi, isolated and exhausted, could only watch the carnage unfold. But beyond tactics, beyond personnel, what Bayern exposed was a complete loss of identity. Barcelona didn't know what they were anymore. They weren't the possession-dominant machine of Guardiola. They weren't the devastating counter-attacking unit of Enrique. They were nothing. A collection of expensive players with no cohesive plan, no shared belief, no fight. Bayern didn't just beat Barcelona. They humiliated them. They revealed to the world what those who watched closely already knew. This wasn't a great team having a bad day. This was a hollow shell, pretending to be elite, finally exposed under the harsh light of top-level competition. The 8-2 wasn't a collapse. It was the autopsy, the public dissection of a dynasty already dead. But here's the thing. The players weren't the only ones to blame. Perhaps they weren't even the main culprits. Behind every collapsed empire is a series of catastrophic decisions. And Barcelona's boardroom made almost every wrong choice possible. Start with transfers. Ousmane Dembélé, £105 million. Injured constantly. Philippe Coutinho, £142 million. Didn't fit the system. Sold at a massive loss. Antoine Griezmann, £107 million. Played out of position. Unwanted within 2 years. These weren't just expensive mistakes. They were signs of a club with no sporting plan, no long-term vision, just panic buying, chasing names, trying to replace Neymar's departure with whoever was available, regardless of fit. Meanwhile, La Masia withered. The academy that had produced the spine of Barcelona's greatest teams was ignored. Talented youngsters left for other clubs. The pathway from youth to first team, once the envy of world football, was blocked by expensive, aging imports. Financial recklessness compounded everything. Wages spiraled out of control. The wage bill became the highest in world football, unsustainable even for a club of Barca's size. And when COVID hit, when revenue collapsed, the house of cards fell. Barcelona couldn't register new players, couldn't afford to keep Messi. The greatest player in their history had to leave because the club was broke. But perhaps the deepest route was political. Presidents used the club for personal ambition. Decisions were made for publicity, not performance. Bartomeu's board prioritized image over substance, signing players for social media buzz rather than tactical need. The collapse on the pitch was designed in the boardroom. It was inevitable, and by the time people realized, it was far too late. Camp Nou felt different now. The cathedral of football, once filled with expectation and magic, echoed with disappointment. Messi was gone. The man who had been the club's heartbeat for 2 decades, forced out by financial mismanagement. His tearful goodbye press conference felt like a funeral. What remained was uncertainty. A squad bloated with high earners and thin on quality. A club drowning in debt. A fan base disillusioned, angry, betrayed. Barcelona's identity, The thing that made them more than just another football club had been lost. They weren't the team that played beautiful football anymore. They weren't the team that developed their own stars. They weren't the team that stood for something beyond winning. They were just another struggling giant, clinging to past glories, unsure of what came next. The stadiums they once dominated now felt like graveyards of ambition. The European nights that used to thrill now brought only dread. And the question everyone asked wasn't if Barcelona could win again. It was whether they even knew who they were anymore. From empire to ruins, from dominance to dust. The collapse of FC Barcelona wasn't a single moment. It was a slow, agonizing unraveling. A combination of tactical stagnation, mental fragility, boardroom incompetence, and the loss of identity. And as the cameras panned across an empty Camp Nou, as Messi's number 10 shirt was retired, as the debris of a dynasty settled, one question lingered in the air. Could they ever rise again? But perhaps the story doesn't end in darkness, because buried beneath the rubble, something was stirring. Young legs, fresh hunger, a new generation that didn't carry the weight of Rome, Anfield, or Lisbon. Players who didn't know what it felt like to be invincible, and so had nothing to lose.
I don't think I've seen anything like it since Messi.
He's the chosen one.
Yeah.
He's the chosen one after Messi.
The best player in the world right now is Lamine Yamal.
I think he's the best player in the world, to be honest.
The 17-year-old, I think, is doing things that no other 17-year-old's ever done in football. I think at the moment, I don't know if there's anyone more exciting to go to a stadium and watch right now.
Lamine Yamal, 17 years old and already terrorizing defenses. Explosive pace, fearless dribbling, the kind of raw talent that makes you believe in miracles. Pedri, a midfielder with the vision of Xavi and the grace of Iniesta, reading the game like he'd played it for decades. Gavi, all fire and aggression, pressing like his life depends on it, the warrior Barcelona desperately needed. Then there's Alejandro Bald, lightning down the left, and Pau Cubarsí, calm beyond his years at the back. Kid from La Masia. The academy hadn't died. It had been hibernating, and now it was awake. Xavi returned as coach. Not the broken version of Barcelona, but the architect of its greatest era. He knew what the club was supposed to be because he had lived it, bled it, embodied it. He rebuilt the identity, brought back the principles, made them believe again. And when Xavi left, Hansi Flick arrived. The man who orchestrated Bayern's 8-2 destruction, now tasked with resurrection. And he's delivering tactical clarity, defensive organization, a team that presses with purpose. And it's not just the kids. Robert Lewandowski, one of the world's most lethal strikers, banging in goals with ruthless efficiency. Rafinha, finally unleashed, tearing down wings with pace and precision. The numbers tell a story of resurgence. Barcelona sit top of La Liga, dominant, hungry, playing with an intensity not seen in years. Yamal is being spoken about as the future of football. Pedri and Gavi are running midfields. The style is back. The identity is back. Camp Nou is roaring again. This isn't the finished article. There will be setbacks, challenges, doubts, but something fundamental has changed. The fear is gone. The comfort is gone. In its place, hunger. Young players with everything to prove. A coach who understands the identity. A club slowly, painfully, remembering who it's supposed to be. The collapse was real. The humiliation was real. But so is this. The rise of a new generation. The return of La Masia. The rediscovery of Barcelona's soul. They're not back yet. Not fully. Not at the summit. But they're climbing. And for the first time in years, when you watch Barcelona, you don't see a team haunted by its past. You see a team building its future. The empire fell, but from the ruins, something is growing. And maybe, just maybe, the world hasn't seen the last of Barcelona's greatness.